Okay, hello, and welcome to the Door Philanthropy Podcast. I am, once again, at a Nexus Summit, and I'm interviewing my good friend, Alex Amouyel. Did I pronounce that right?
Amouyel.
Amouyel?
Yeah.
My mother is a French professor, and she'll be the first person to tell you that I'm not qualified to pronounce anything in French. Particularly, I grew up learning mostly Quebecois French. You are from Paris?
I'm from Paris. Hello,
I've been
everyone.
there. So you grew up in Paris?
Yeah, I grew up in Paris until 17.
So what was that like?
I was just talking about that actually because my brother just got married on Saturday in Paris.
Mazel tov.
So thank you. And so there was some reminiscing about our childhood and various things like that. And I just remember lots of games playing cartoon characters, French cartoon characters.
Asterix and Obelix.
Well, and also Marsupilami. I don't know that you've heard of
Tintin.
that, but it's like a yellow, sort of animal which isn't quite which jumps everywhere. It's complicated.
What is his name?
Marsupilami, and he lives in the Amazonian forest. And
I also remember Babar.
Forest. Yeah.
Did you have Babar?
Yeah, but we didn't want to play being Babar. We didn't want to be an elephant. We wanted to be Marsupilamis. And then I don't know, lots of playing, and now everybody has video games and stuff like that. But I remember spending a lot of time playing in parks on slides and various things like that. Yeah.
Amazing. When you were a little girl growing up in Paris, what did you imagine that you would grow up to be?
I had a pretty defined idea from very young, but it didn't turn out at all how I imagined.
Rarely.
Yeah. So my earliest memory of wanting to do something was that I wanted to be a prosecutor to put bad people in prison. Nowadays, having learned about it, I would probably still be a prosecutor, but sort of work on restorative justice and changing the criminal justice system. So quite different. And then afterwards, maybe 13, 14, I decided that I wanted to be a research scientist to rid the world of cancer. And I actually pursued then a degree in biochemistry and even started a PhD that I quit after 3 months. With the idea of doing that. But then,
3 months.
Yeah. That was one of the mistakes of my.
Why did you? What was the? Is there a particular reason why you quit?
Because in fact, the day-to-day of being a scientific researcher in terms of attention to detail and obviously sort of being obsessed very heavily with a problem for 10 or 20 years was probably not. It was. The issue area was something I was passionate about, but the day-to-day of scientific research wasn't, and probably wasn't adapted to my skill set either. But there was when I was young, I guess there was a lot of outside pressure that I was good at this, and therefore I should, and I got a big scholarship, and therefore I should
this
do
was
it.
my next question for you. So the two main things from when you wanted to put bad people away, which. Certainly, there are bad people who should be put away, and also to rid the world of cancer. And those indicate to me very strong values. Who and you talk about some sort of outside forces and pressure, but certainly someone taught you to be the sort of person that wants to make the world a better place.
Yes, I definitely think. Obviously, my parents and my grandmother had a huge influence on my life on instilling those values. So from a very young age, I think I did want to make the world a better place. I also think, I don't know, the prosecutor idea probably comes from watching too much TV series on Law and Order and all of that. But then I also think that there's an element of, I grew up in a sort of middle class family in a country which has good, free education and good sort of social safety nets and blah, blah, blah. And so I think that I could, I had the luxury of not having to worry about money too much and things like that. And so that I think is also something which allows you to develop the values of wanting to give back and save the world. And
certainly it makes things like becoming a prosecutor or a researcher seem more realistic.
Yeah.
My own parents have PhDs. And I actually remember once, I never tried to get one, but I considered it. And one of the benefits of having parents who have PhDs is you can ask them. And my dad said, I remember he drew a circle, and he said, this circle is everything all the people in the world know, right? And when you're born, you're just a little dot in the middle, you know nothing, right? You slowly, the circle becomes a little bit bigger, right? What people who get PhDs do is they make a straight line to the edge of the circle, and then they push the circle out a little bit, and the circle becomes just a little tiny bit bigger, right? But the majority of the circle, they never get to see it.
Yeah.
And he explained that to me, and I said, "Well, that's congratulations to both of you on your PhDs." But I would rather. There's a lot of other interesting stuff in here that I can imagine myself doing. And I think probably similar to you. So after you gave up,
Yes.
you quit
Yes.
on becoming a researcher. What did you do next?
So yeah, I quit the day I turned 21. So that was also significant in a sense.
Was this in France?
No, in the UK.
In the UK, so in America, the drinking age is 21. So that's a fairly important birthday.
In the UK, it's not that meaningful in terms of
you
legality.
definitely are drinking before that. Yes.
Yeah, you can both drink before that, you can vote before that, you can drive before that, and lots of things.
We can
as well. It's just drinking. But anyway, so that was significant in some ways, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do.
Still pretty young, 21.
Yeah, but I went for a few months to teach English in China, and then I applied for master's programs and went to do a master's in international affairs and notably conflict and security. But sort of, I partly chose my master's because it was as broad as possible, and
yes.
I could sort of study
again international affairs.
Yeah,
that literally covers everything.
Exactly. So that was good. It was the opposite of my undergrad. I did it in the opposite end. My undergraduate was fairly specific, and there I was fairly broad. But yeah, that then sort of started opening up a lot more doors.
And so after you, I think every day is a school day, right? We all continue to learn, right? But you have finished your formal education.
Yes, for now.
And you can, who knows, right? So once you had the master's degree, what did you go and did you get a job or something? What did you do?
Yeah, and nobody would pay me to do anything interesting in human rights. You know, I would gerry into working at Human Rights Watch and those types of places. Nobody would pay me to do anything interesting in that. So I joined a management consulting firm in London because they would pay me. Mm-hmm. And it sounded vaguely interesting, and it was. And then one of the projects I did with them was working for Save the Children on a pro bono project. Mm-hmm. Which was one of my dream sort of institutions, and so then
we gave them feedback once.
Good.
Twice.
Super. And
so
then
the Australian office sends us proposals.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And then we ended up working. That went well, and so I ended up sort of in the end taking a full-time job at Save the Children. And transferring sort of out in that sense from the management consulting firm, and I did that for while, and then I came to New York and worked for the Clinton Foundation, and now I'm here at MIT Solve.
Terrific. I have a couple questions about the things that happened in there. So Save the Children is one of the world's largest nonprofits, right? Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about, have you, and I think you also have, at least through your social network, some experience with small nonprofits that I would call the unfunded, right? Yeah. We're happy to give feedback to Save the Children, and their Australian program is not as well funded as some of the other entities, but they're not a typical place. Can you talk to me a little bit? The largest nonprofit I ever worked at was Conservation International, yeah, which is large, yeah, and I in many ways I did like it because there's a lot of comfort that comes from a thing like that. You only have to do your job. Right, at the unfunded, everyone is like got 3 jobs. Right, I literally, in fact, once I tried to do more, they were like, "Stay in your lane." Right, it was like so, and for some people, really like that comfort and security, and that Conservation International is going to exist next year, and those sorts of things. But right, for me, it was also I want to going back to talking about my dad drawing the straight line to the circle. I wanted to dance around in the entire circle. There was stuff happening in the other divisions at Conservation International that I found fascinating, and I wasn't allowed to go to those meetings, and I don't know. And for I learned a lot, and it was very interesting. I did like somewhat enjoy my work there, but eventually I realized I had to leave, and that was sort of when I realized I wanted to be at smaller, more upstarty type places.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about what you see as the difference.
Between
and huge and tiny.
Yeah, and I worked at different places, which were different sizes throughout. And I think what's interesting, so Save the Children is, I think, the largest independent children's organization in the world. So it's huge. I think it has now over $2 billion of funding every year, and like.
Well, I assume there's probably
tens of thousands.
Probably at least 50 different entities, right?
Yeah. So, but that's sort of what I was
country.
doing. So that's indeed a lot of the work that I was doing, and I think that. So first of all, in general, I think Save the Children's wonderful, and people sort of berate often things that are too big and overhead percentages and a number of things, but there's reasons for which scale and reach are really important. Save the Children works in a number of countries that nobody else is present in because they have the capabilities and the reach, and that also means that when for years it was one of the only organizations that worked in Myanmar, and so when there was a big cyclone and people were donating lots of money to a number of the NGOs.
The proposal we read is in Myanmar.
Oh, great.
Is it still called Myanmar?
Well, it's actually
my geography in that part of the world is very rusty.
Well, Burma is the colonial name that the British gave it, and then the military junta, which ultimately took over, decided to rename it Myanmar, but both terms are in a sense problematic because Burma is the colonial name and Myanmar is the junta name, so...
Okay.
So go ahead. I mean, the original name is Myanmar, so you could say they were not wrong. But anyway.
And there certainly is a lot of issues.
Yes, indeed. But so they, but that was the point. It was so the children, when the cyclone hit and people were donating money to all these organizations, they legally couldn't work in that country, and in fact, Save the Children was the only one that could one of the only ones who could legally work because they had been there for 30 years and they'd established sort of a presence and good relationships. And so I think that makes, and although sometimes overhead and processes and division of labor makes it feel a bit more inefficient than it could be, it also means that they have proper child safety procedures, and they have proper, they ensure that the money is going to the right places and isn't being used in a corrupt way, and that the people that they hire are going to be good stewards of donor money. So I think that there's a lot to say also about big organizations and scale, and they can do things that ultimately smaller organizations, they might be more innovative, and and you need that balance, but there's a lot of things that scale brings you. And my role at Save the Children was specifically to make it more efficient and to look across all these different entities, the Australians, the British, the Americans, which were the sort of fundraising parts of Save the Children, and sort of make it more efficient for them to work with their different country offices and various things. So it was also about driving, I think my role there was it was a small team, and my role there was specifically to look about, going around, having a bird's eye view and going around the world and like helping figure out the sort of big questions that Save the Children was asking. So that was very exciting.
Very interesting. One of the aims of the podcast is why we do like to educate people about the philanthropy sector. And one of the things, the knowledge gaps I've noticed, right, is I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between the large nonprofits, the difference in size between the large nonprofits and like what most people think of as nonprofits. Right? I think most people assume that they don't have any money, right? But some of them, in fact, have. Where you meant $2 billion. I think probably $2 billion is probably right. Maybe even a little bit more.
That was a couple of years ago.
There are several international nonprofits with multi-billion-dollar budgets every year, and there are people making money, and they're doing real work, and they can pay for work and stuff. And then there are unfunded. There are people who are it is kept alive because of the
blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, the founder is running on fumes, right? And to the casual observer, right? It's website, nonprofit, looks like they're the same thing. Right? These are really, really different universes. And I agree with you. Like I prefer myself the smaller ones. It's what's more interesting to me. But you're absolutely right. Like especially in the aftermath of a disaster, You want like organizations that have been in that country, right, and know what they're doing there, who can respond to that, right? But sometimes, like let's say an all new kind of disaster comes along, right? That'll require some new and innovative solutions, right? And that's where the unfunded come in. That's very, very interesting. The differences between those things. So thank you. Then you went on to work for Bubba, the big fella. How was that?
Yes, President Clinton. It was fantastic. I mean, it was a totally different experience, and that's something that I look for in that sense. Sort of, whereas Save the Children was very much working with the different country offices in Pakistan, in North Korea, in Cambodia, in Lebanon, etc., and sort of helping them become more efficient, which was a lot about finance, HR, legal, and sort of the back office of running an NGO. This role at the Clinton Foundation was looking at the program of the Clinton Global Initiative, which was the big annual meeting, and sort of what are the themes, who are the speakers. So there, it's a completely different role, because it was about really setting the agenda for the people setting the agenda, and heads of state and Bill Gates and President Obama and a whole bunch of people, and so
fancy people.
Having
fancy meetings,
big
large checks and stuff.
And creating multi-million or hundreds of millions and even several billion-dollar cross-sector partnerships, and really having an influence, I guess, over the state of philanthropy at large, in a sense, compared to what I was doing at Save the Children, was very much in the weeds on the ground and that type of thing. So it was fantastic to completely change the frame of reference, if you will.
I'm interested to hear you say that. So I was invited to some CGI things. I've never was involved in any of this stuff. But it does seem from my outside perspective, it does seem to me that it was, along with some other people, part of starting a change in how philanthropists talk about how we do philanthropy in this country. One of the things that's important to remind everybody is that philanthropy is still quite a new concept for humans. We've been around for thousands of years. We've only had philanthropy for a couple hundred max. It depends on how you define that.
Yeah, I think that there was always support systems that are
foundation-based philanthropy, like we're talking about CGI. Did that?
That's
not a historical thing, right? It was done, I think, like my grandmother's generation, who ran my foundation before me.
Yeah.
I don't think she was a very good philanthropist, because she wasn't trying to be. She didn't view it as a skill that could be evaluated and improved. And with CGI, I think we were starting to say, let's do this, and let's start. And again, he didn't invent this himself, right? Yeah. But along with a lot of other people, and that sort of started to change how the conversation in philanthropy, from a back-patting conversation, right? Aren't we all wonderful? I'll see you at the next gala, right? Which still happens.
Yeah.
But they were, and if I remember correctly, I think Clinton was very sort of pioneering with the concept of commitments.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what commitments were at CGI? I was doing finger quotes. For those listening.
Quotes. So commitment to actions. I think there ended up being 3,400 commitments. There are still a number still operational. They sort of survive.
Give me an example of a commitment.
The initial ones, and it was still the case, is when you came to the meeting as a CGI member, you had to commit to do something. And it often, at the beginning, it was very much my organization, I'm a corporation, or I'm a foundation, or a philanthropist, and I commit to doing this. And the first ones were, a bit small and quite individual, but then very quickly it became about partnership and cross-sector partnerships. So I forgot the percentage, but most of the commitments in the later batches were corporations working with foundations and governments, or and nonprofits, or several different type of combinations, and committing to doing things over and above and beyond what they would have done otherwise, and really formalizing again something that was developing maybe outside, but I think CGI really sort of helped catalyze, which sort of public-private partnerships, and this notions of no one sector alone is going to solve the really tough problems such as climate change, or how do we educate on the next generations for the 21st century, and that type of thing. And so there were some which were billions of dollars. The biggest one, I think, was the AFL-CIO and the AFT moving all of their pension fund money towards renewable energy and creating jobs around that, and sort of a real
I assume
shift.
that's a big pension fund.
Yeah, well, it's the unions. It's the major American unions.
I live here in DC.
Yeah. sorry.
Familiar with the building. The AFL-CIO has a very fancy building.
Yes, it's the American
Right by the White
Federation of
House.
Teachers. And then, but then there was some, which were multi-stakeholder around women sourcing, a combination of Walmart and, I can't remember all the people who were involved, but sort of that they would source 40% of their products from women-owned businesses and things like that.
Do you have a favorite commitment?
All commitments were my favorite
All of
children's.
You don't work there anymore.
I sort of.
If
this
you're
is
under an
now
NDA
like
or
3.
something.
No, they're all public, and that was also one of the things.
They
all the
are
commitments.
listed?
Yeah,
Are
they're
these
still
all-
listed on the website. You can see they're all public.
Interesting. I like listing philanthropy programs.
Yeah. It's it's also 3.5 years ago, so I can't remember all the examples. One of the bigger ones as well was the Rockefeller Foundation working with Swiss Re and a number of them on the Resilient Cities project and all the C40 mayors and that type of thing, and really trying to bring chief resilience officers in the different towns, because we know that cities are at the forefront of climate change and mitigation and adaptation, and there was not really much thinking around that.
So, how long were you at the foundation there?
Just under 4.5 years.
What did you learn in that time?
I learned a lot of things about the sector, and because I didn't have, probably working at Save the Children, that bird's eye view of what both government, corporation, foundations, nonprofits were doing together, and what were the gaps as well. And so I think that was a new world that was very exciting. And then I think that I took a lot of this in sort of then my new role at MIT Solve, and taking still some of that ethos of working across all sectors, but also seeing, I think that what CGI was very good at is bringing the big players to the table and committing millions, if not billions of dollars to sort of looking to solve different issues. And we invited a number of social entrepreneurs as well every year, but being able to connect these smaller social entrepreneurs who had promising innovative solutions to then these bigger players was not, it was a little bit sort of, here's a ticket to CGI now, figure it out. And there was not a lot of support there. And so I think, in starting MIT Solve, a lot of it is more
You're very
focused.
good at predicting what my next question
Yeah,
will be.
exactly. Is sort of focusing a lot more on that earlier
Can you
stage
read
innovation.
these notes?
No, I can't. Is focusing on that earlier stage innovation, and how technology also plays a role, needs to play a role in those conversations, and infusing that into still working with these bigger players.
Yeah,
but
because you have some
bigger.
large CGI style partners, right,
Yeah.
that are helping out with the with your solvers. And I've noticed that you do, both when you talk about your program and also in your normal speech, you use the word solve a lot.
Yes.
Can you tell me what you mean by like solving?
So I think that we, taking it again a step really, really high level. Hopefully your audience is familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or if they've been paying attention. But
The dozens of people who listen to my philanthropy podcast are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals.
Excellent,
Yes.
excellent. And they, they set a benchmark for the world to hopefully, really advance the world's progress. And we talk a lot about the $2.5 trillion of funding that is missing annually to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, right? And
Hold on.
$2.5 trillion.
So yeah, I heard someone from the UN say that once.
Yeah.
And it was not a question and answer panel, so I didn't get asked a question. Can you give me and the audience like a what exactly are we talking about? So they're saying we can meet all these goals.
Well,
we just need $2.5 trillion.
So that's the problem. They say that's sort of a little bit.
But am I more or less correct?
Yeah, you're correct. They say we're not going to achieve these goals if unless government, the private sector, philanthropists, etc., pony up a lot more money, i.e., $2.5 trillion per annum, to reach it. And obviously, we've already
no other way to do it.
Well, this is the problem.
Must be $2.5 trillion a year.
Well, this is an estimate that.
This is just a shocking lack of imagination.
Yes, but so that's the point. What they don't talk about is, and I'm writing an article on this that I need to actually finish and publish, but is the innovation gap. Is really, do we think that even if we had all this money suddenly available with the solutions that we have today, we would suddenly...
The iron lung would be perfect.
Yeah, and so we still really need innovation to reach, and it's not about sort of nuclear fusion and sort of cutting edge technologies, the type of technologies that MIT is developing. But when you're talking about lack of energy for people in rural Liberia, you're not going to be talking about nuclear fusion. You're going to be talking about how do we make off-grid solar affordable and usable by people living in rural Liberia, right? So it's a different type of solutions. But if you could invest some money and resources into innovative solutions that are designed for the poorest and marginalized populations, the people that the SDGs are trying to serve, not only, is this necessary to solve and achieve the SDGs, but you probably could bring the unit cost down, and that $2.5 trillion could come down, because we know that innovation and technology brings down the cost. So I think there is a failure of imagination in that sense, of saying we need to invest in innovation because that will drive down that gap probably faster than trying to raise a shit. Oh, sorry.
This is the dozens of people who listen to my philanthropy podcast have heard the word shit before.
Yeah, okay. Then trying to raise a ton more money. Who knows? There might be some children.
This is an adult podcast. And if their children are listening, they're going to learn that word eventually, right?
Yeah, they probably know it.
And this is as good a place as any for them to learn it. So I would generally, it's kind of funny. I kind of agree with what the UN is saying there, right? The way I would phrase it is, with the current systems we have, we're not going to solve these problems.
Yes. And we do need more money. There's no question we need more money, but I think we can also, we could use more innovation. I think money needs
to be spent on different things. I don't necessarily think we need more of it. Right? I think if we could rejigger the current UN budget in a way that does meet the goals. I also wouldn't phrase a lot of the goals the way that they are. Right? And some of them sort of assume we will forever be capitalist. Yeah. And to me, some of those goals absolutely won't be met in a capitalist system.
Yeah. I mean, that's a 2-hour-long debate on whether or not the SDGs are the right system. So but let's just assume that at the moment that's the system that we're all working towards.
I have an evaluator who works at a very, very large philanthropy. On par with actually I think it probably might be a little bit bigger in funds with CGI, and we correspond often. I'm a little bit of a philanthropy wonk, and he has he's very focused on the SDGs. I think they're interesting. It's good for folks to know about them, but I really don't believe it's going to happen exactly like that. Right? But before them, we had the MDGs, and before that, we had nothing at all. So these are really good first steps. Before that we had Torah at least. Somewhat of a guide, some goals for us, right? But so that's how he phrases it to me, right? Like, in order to achieve the SDGs, the current systems we have aren't going to do it. There will need to be large changes, right? And he really wants to find interventions that can make some of those large changes. But I mean, he has this little treatise he's working on. It's currently about 20 pages long. I've read several drafts of it. People send me stuff for feedback a lot, as you might imagine.
Well, that's your job in that sense.
Well, I like to, especially if they're an evaluator for me, I will usually read it and give them my thoughts. And this guy's an influential person in philanthropy, so I want to be able to advise him as best I can. And he's very dire about it, right? Like unless there is like there will need to be a major structural like event, right, or revolution or something, right, in order to meet these goals, right? And what I generally advise, like in order, sometimes you really have to calm him down a little bit about it, right? Because it is, and he's right. Some of this stuff's very upsetting, particularly with climate and stuff. You start looking at the numbers, it can be quite depressing. But I do remind him that we've been a very innovative species for a very long time, and have solved, in fact, even larger challenges than some of the ones that we face today. And for me, it's all about just identifying those solutions, which I assume is somewhat similar to you.
Yeah. So,
my specific question about Solve, right?
Yeah.
Someone at MIT decided to do it at some point.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about so I know about the program, right? And it's somewhat similar to mine, right? And you're looking for people with global solutions, and MIT provide some resources. And I think where we're different, right? You, like in the a la CGI, right? Some connections to these larger corporations and stuff, which could be really helpful. I think that's really neat. But why does MIT, which is already has graduates who are in business and is already doing lots of things, and there are some similar programs to yours on campus, why start something new when they did?
So
I'm thrilled that they did.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong, but just why would
MIT do that? It's a question that gets asked often, but there's a larger question about what is the role of an university in the 21st century that I won't get into, but is pretty interesting.
Indeed.
But in fact, if you read MIT's mission, which is both on its website but also inscribed on the dome of MIT.
In Latin or?
No, in English. It was founded in 1861, so
okay.
So Latin was luckily not
I went to
as
Dickinson,
fashionable.
which was founded in the 1770s, and so everything's Latin everywhere.
Yeah, no, they got over that.
And we don't even
MIT
teach Latin at Dickinson, which is the funniest part of that.
MIT is a school of practical application anyway,
Yeah, sure.
so it was going to be too practically minded to speak in Latin. But really, it is about solving world challenges and bettering humanity, and how they've done that.
They've solved a lot of world challenges.
Indeed, and how they've done that originally was about educating the next generation of scientists and technologists, and about doing cutting-edge fundamental research, right? But the mission of MIT hasn't it obviously has evolved as time has gone, but broadly it stayed the same. But then the ways, the world has changed, and the ways that it operated in the 19th century, or at the end of the 19th century, the way it operated in the first half of the 20th, second half of the 20th, and now in the 21st century, has evolved dramatically and needs to continue to evolve. So Solve was founded, on this idea that there's a lot of things that MIT has done in the past few years to open up its campus around open learning and the massive online courses and that type of thing. But it was founded on the idea, quite simply, that while there are a lot of world challenges and bettering humanity that can be done on campus, there are also lots of talent and ingenuity across the world, and that there are innovators who are not physically at MIT and maybe have never heard of MIT, but who have great solutions and innovations and technologies to solve world challenges. And MIT can and should play and hold in a role in supporting these, even if they're not MIT students or MIT faculty or MIT alumni, right? And so in thinking about this, this was really the idea of, there were many people at MIT talking about this, but really Raphael Reif, the president of MIT, wanted to start this as something that really was opening up MIT's resources, convening power, expertise especially, to the world, and inviting innovators in an open way to submit their solutions to world challenges that we define, but also crowdsource to a large extent, and then helping them connect both with MIT resources, but also with the network that MIT has created and that Solve now has created, and help them advance their work. And there's a wonderful, if you come to MIT, bar MIT itself and the dynamism, the Kendall Square innovation ecosystem is incredible in terms of the startups, the VCs, the biotech companies, the pharma companies, which all exist in this 1 square mile, mostly around life sciences, but not just. And you can really see how an innovation ecosystem has evolved around the university. But how do you think about innovation ecosystems in a global and virtual way? And so those are big questions. And then Solve is certainly trying to be a place where, part of those questions get answered for sure for MIT.
Very interesting. So you, if there's folks out there, and I think there may be, who have solutions, right, and want to be involved in your program, how do they do that?
So we just opened our challenges. So we're talking at the really right time. They're open until July 1st. And they relate to early childhood development, healthy cities, circular supply chains, and community-driven innovation. You can look at our website, solve.mit.edu, for more information. And if you have a solution, it can be non-profit or for-profit. It can be related to an academic institution, including it can be at MIT or not at all. You can be 13, you can be 84. Anybody and everybody is encouraged to apply from anywhere in the world, US, global, Myanmar, anywhere. And you can submit your solution online. So it's a sort of mini business plan application. We're looking for solutions that have traction. So you have to have a tested prototype at least, but very much, we look for solutions which have pilot or growth phase. You have to have an innovation, and you have to have some technology involved in this. The technology itself doesn't have to be new, but it might be a new application of technology to marginalized communities, or it might be an innovation in the business model, which makes that technology affordable and usable. But we're very much open, and we pose these challenges as questions, and we don't presuppose to know the answers. We're hoping there are some things that, we've heard of and the things, but that there's also just this vast array of ingenuity across the world, and that
you don't have you don't have all the answers. That's
no, and we would like to see.
Why are we even doing this interview?
And then it's all open. You can see everybody else who
they
applied.
Currently can apply.
It's open until July 1st.
Until July 1st.
We have, and what do you get if you're selected? First of all, you get feedback. Thanks to the Unfunded List.
You've done this a couple times before. Right?
This will be our 4th cycle.
4th cycle?
Yeah.
So this the first time that we are partnering together.
Exactly.
You will get many, many applications.
The last cycle, we got 1,150 applications from 110 countries.
And at some point, 60 of them
become finalists, and then they're invited to Solve Challenge finals, to come to during UN General Assembly Week in New York City. UNGA, yes, where we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and eat canapes.
The only time I went to UNGA was when they announced the
Oh, great. And so
pretty sure I saw you there. There's New York, right?
Yeah.
It's always pretty crazy. And then there's UNGA, and that's a different situation entirely.
But everybody is there, and so it's worth, as a finalist, being exposed to that and getting to meet all these people. So we bring about 400 people together. There's obviously the judges and then it's like a nice Shark Tank on social enterprises. So the 60 finalists, we work with you once you're selected. Through Unfunded, you'll get feedback
We're going to take all 60 of those and give the full treatment.
The full treatment, and then we select about 32 of those. So about half get ultimately selected to be Solver teams. And then it's a 9-month process from September to May where we actively work with you to understand your needs across funding, expertise, media, impact assessment, et cetera. And then we connect you with our networks, both at MIT and sort of in the wider world within Solve, to help you advance your work. And really the idea is that it's a marketplace for social impact innovation, so that we're working on both sides. We're your talent agency, if you will, as an innovator, and we're pitching you and helping you develop to funders, to experts, to people who have resources that can help advance your work. And we have so far confirmed $725,000 of prize funding for this cycle.
Very good.
We'll announce more as we go. And
So any Richie Riches out there that might want to help, get in touch with you.
Please do, and then
get access to some of the you do get to source some very good solutions.
Yes, we do all the hard work for you, basically. And then in the last couple of years, we've brokered $7 million worth of grant funding for the Solve team. So I think that sort of we have a good track record and only growing and sort of really helping catalyze this. But we also know that money is not at all the only thing that early stage social entrepreneurs, be they non-profits or for-profits.
In my experience, it's I mean, usually everybody more money, but obviously you can solve problems with money, right? But in my experience, it is probably not the most important thing that they need right now.
Indeed,
at least the proposals I am reading, which are all very early stage.
Yeah, so we put mentors to help you, and we give you feedback, we give you exposure through other conferences and media, and so that's why we do this needs assessment at the beginning. It's really understanding what is, holding you back to some extent, or what you need to validate your business model and your impact, and then be able to really develop and scale and reach these institutional funders.
Terrific. I am predictably late to being a table captain. But I want to thank you very much for coming on to the Open Door Philanthropy podcast. This has been a very good conversation. I always enjoy speaking with you. I hope that the committee and I are helpful to the solvers.
I look forward
to reading all of their stuff.
Yeah, this is going to be fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. And
thank
anybody get in touch. Bye.